Back in the day, I used to crawl YouTube for all sorts of tutorials on how to optimize and make Windows XP, Vista, and 7 faster. And while most modern OSs and hardware have come a long way, let's take a look at what we can do in 2021 to quote unquote make your PC faster. My name's Adrian for Digital Dojos, and let's jump into it. Starting off with number one, hardware. Because at the end of the day, you're always going to be limited by the components within your computer, whether you have a laptop, desktop, custom built, or store-bought machine, it doesn't matter. And the best place to look at when it comes to improving your performance is the upgrades that you can make. So take a look at your PC. You can go into right-click properties here, see your current specs. Maybe you built yours like I did mine, so you have a better idea of what's in it. But if you bought it from a store, you bought it pre-built, you can look at the specs at hand and see what upgrades can be made. I would suggest starting with two upgrades that are the best bang for your buck. One is your hard drive. Looking at the hard drive you have in your computer, and especially if you're on something like a hard disk drive or a spinning drive from back in the day, consider upgrading to a solid state drive. These drives are faster, there are no physical spinning parts in it, and nowadays in 2021, they're really, really affordable, if not comparable to that of hard drives. You can get real good storage options like this 1TB Samsung for only $120. And if your computer supports SATA 3 drives, this is a huge, huge upgrade you can make to improving overall performance. Do note you will either have to reinstall your OS and or port over your current hard drive and data to a new hard drive if you're making this upgrade. It's an easy to do one, and again, it just simply involves you popping out the old hard drive and putting in a new one, or even, again, just adding it into your existing machine. Number two would be RAM or memory. You can use applications like this Newegg site to find out the memory your system supports and the max it may support. When it comes to multitasking and running multiple apps, it often relates to that of your RAM or memory. So if you have 8 gigs in your machine, but it supports up to 16, you can essentially double your RAM by buying appropriate RAM modules. You can look at your task manager here to see your RAM performance and see how much RAM you have in your machine. In my case, I have 64 gigs, which is traditionally overkill for a lot of people. It's not typical for an average workflow. But if you're somewhere like 8 gigs of RAM, I would at least recommend trying to get to 16 gigs if your machine supports it. So that might mean adding additional RAM modules and or swapping out the current ones you have for bigger RAM sticks to get better overall performance. Number two, and this goes back to the hard drive, and we're talking about hard drive capacity. Checking your disk for unused apps, old data, and so on for things to run more efficiently is a common culprit when it comes to slowness or just general performance issues. Making sure that these hard drives aren't filled to 99% capacity all the time. So this can mean a couple of things. You can use the built-in add or remove programs. You can sort by size here in Windows to find the biggest apps on your hard drive and uninstall things like games. When it comes to files, so for example, I have a lot of video files on my computer, you can use third-party tools like a video I did on Winderstat to figure out the biggest files on your hard drive to go ahead and start cleaning those up and removing them. This goes a long way, and again, when it comes to just overall capacity, you want to make sure that you're at least in a good spot when it comes to your hard drives, and when you start getting beyond that 90% mark, to make sure you do some maintenance and clean things up. Number three, this may seem obvious, but some people forget, keeping your Windows up to date, not just the OS, but generally all your apps, is a real big thing when it comes to performance. Maybe your computer is on an older version of Windows that can, do for an upgrade, and it allows for Windows 10 support, for example. Making sure that you run these updates, even installing some things like the additional updates, or making sure that your applications that you often use, your browser, things like that, are running and up to date. Sometimes people forget that automatic updates may be off, and you forget to run these, and these are really integral and key to ensuring that you're getting the best performance out of your hardware. Number four, startup items, because a lot of what can make your PC feel actually slow and just not great in terms of performance is how it reacts in certain situations. And a common complaint tends to be that of startups and rebooting your machine. So if you hit Windows key R and type in msconfig, this will launch the system configuration menu. Click on the startup tab. In this case, on Windows 10, it's now built into Task Manager. This will show you all the applications that are running at startup. So all those little icons that tend to pop up in the bottom right, that's typically why a lot of PCs tend to boot slow, because they're doing so much at boot that it causes issues, it causes time, and takes up a lot of resources. So coming through this list and clicking and disabling all those apps that you don't need running at boot, I don't need Skype running when I turn on my computer. I don't need Steam running when I turn on my computer. A lot of these apps I can manually launch if I ever need to use them, so I only ensure that the apps that I do need at boot and I always access are enabled. Other than that, I simply disable them if I don't use them. I don't require them at boot. This saves a lot of resources and highly improves overall startup time. Number 5, I know this one may seem obvious, but again, worth stating, malware and antivirus. Another factor that often comes into play when it's performance issues is viruses, malware, and so on, because they can really bog down a system, if not outright make it unusable. So making sure that you have an up-to-date antivirus or endpoint security system, I would recommend you download either something like Malwarebytes, or you can even use Windows Defender that's built in. Malwarebytes is completely free. You get the free trial and then use that one permanently or upgrade to their premium membership if you really like it. But this does things like real-time protection. You can see I have an update here, so I got to take my own advice and make sure I run this after this video. Web protection, scheduled scans, I have mine run daily. But again, you can install an app like this and just make sure that your system is clean. If you have a lot of performance issues, it may be worth taking a look, installing an app like Malwarebytes and having it run a full system scan to make sure that you have nothing that may be potentially jeopardizing the system and security. Not only is it important for your performance, but you obviously don't want to be running on a computer and storing your personal data on it if there is viruses and whatnot that may be jeopardizing your safety and security. Now, lastly, number 6 really is just miscellaneous tips that I kind of want to throw out there. First one being reinstalling in a clean OS state. Nowadays, Windows has this reset feature built into Windows 10 where you can reset your PC. This is essentially the nuking option. You can nuke it in 2 ways. You can choose to nuke Windows 10 and have it keep all your files, so essentially it keeps your data but reinstalls the OS, or you can just have it remove everything from, down to your personal files and going completely clean slate. This is often seen when people get really bad viruses, or maybe you just want to have a clean slate. Your PC was really great at the beginning when it came out of that box years ago. Over time, it just accrued a lot of junk data and so on. So you want to do a clean slate. This might be that option for you, but again, just keep in mind you have 2 options when it comes to resetting your PC, but may be worth running if you really truly want to get to a clean slate. Back in the day, there used to be a lot of tweaks related to the visual effects in Windows that would really help if you turn these off. Nowadays, it's not so much, but worth noting anyway. So if you go into PC here and scroll down, you can see Advanced System Settings. This will take you into the System Properties menu. And once you're in here, you simply go into Advanced, Performance, and then Settings. And then here, you have the ability to adjust visual effects for Windows. Traditionally, you're either going to be on Let Windows Choose What's Best for My Computer or just for Best Appearance. This is essentially all those tiny effects that Windows has, from transparencies to shaders to shadows. And if you adjust for best performance, it essentially turns a lot of these off. Or you can just do custom and tweak what you want. But again, nowadays, this isn't as important, but for older PCs, it can actually help out a lot. So if you don't like all the arrow looks and all the transparency effects, by turning those off, it simply just keeps Windows really bare bones and helps improve overall performance on a day-to-day when you're using the operating system. Next up is for laptop users. I would look at your power plan or power options. This is more effective on that of a laptop because this tends to switch more than desktops. But if you go into power plan or power options, you can see what settings you may be on for power plan. What this means is essentially Windows has these power plans built in to ensure that when you're on your laptop and you're not plugged into a charger, you may go into something like battery or power saver mode. Depending on your PC manufacturer, they may have their own plans built into here. And this essentially tweaks a lot of settings and hardware to essentially downplay itself so it doesn't run as fast or as to its potential due to the fact that it's trying to save you power and prioritize battery life. Whereas you may just want to be getting high performance all the time or high performance when you're plugged into a charger, and you can tweak all of those settings here in power options. Again, these plans are going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, but if you're on something like Power Saver, it may be worth testing it out and playing around to switching to other power plans and settings. And lastly, at the end of the day, I know I talked about hardware upgrades, but sometimes in some scenarios, in some cases, it might just be time for a new PC. It may have been years since you bought the old one or built the old one. You might have upgraded it over time, but you're hitting certain, hardware limitations in terms of what's compatible and what's new. Certain software, like for example, the upcoming Windows 11 won't even be compatible with certain hardware. So you got to weigh it out in your specific scenario, but sometimes all the fiddling, all the upgrades, all the time that you spend on things like this might just be worth buying a newer and better, more modern computer. Again, that's not always practical, but it is worth weighing out at the end of the day. If you have tips on how to improve your overall performance nowadays in 2021 when it comes to PCs and Windows, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing for more content. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching.